There are moments in life when fate doesn't ask for permission. It just walks in, silent as the pre-dawn drizzle, and changes everything. Raphael didn't know that afternoon would be different from all the others. He had no idea that, upon opening a door in his own home, he would find something he didn't even know he was looking for. A huddled woman, a child in her arms, and a muffled cry that echoed like a plea for help he never knew how to answer until now. He had everything: money, power, respect. But within the silent mansion, all that remained was the weight of unresolved grief and a heart that learned not to feel so it wouldn't shatter completely. She had next to nothing, just a daughter in her arms, a life squeezed between shifts, and the fierce courage of someone who can't give up. Two worlds that should never have touched, but they did. And when it happened, nothing was ever the same. This is the story of a man who lost himself and a woman who never had the right to lose herself. Of an encounter born of chance, but that transformed into something impossible to ignore. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives with a hidden sob, a forgotten blanket, a look that says everything words cannot. Subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories. Raphael pushed the front door open with his shoulder, his suit rumpled after a day that felt like weeks. The mansion was too quiet, as always. The sound of his own footsteps annoyed him. Everything in this house was impeccable, organized, cold, exactly like the life he'd built unintentionally. He dropped his briefcase on the sofa and loosened his tie, but the tightness in his chest didn't ease. It never did. He walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water he didn't drink, and stood there staring into nothingness. The house had 12 rooms. He used 3. The rest was just empty space, like him. He thought of his brother. He thought of his ex-wife. He thought of how everything he touched simply crumbled, as if his hands were made for destruction, not for holding. That's when he heard it. A low, muffled sound. A cry. Raphael frowned. It wasn't common for anyone to be in the house at that hour. The housekeeper left at 4. The driver had the day off. He followed the sound to the hallway leading to the library, his heart beating with a strange, almost anxious rhythm. He paused before the half-open door. The crying was coming from inside. He pushed the door open slowly, and he saw her. Clara was huddled behind the bookshelf, her body curved over something she was protecting with her arms. Her face was wet, her eyes wide with fright when she realized she was no longer alone. She tried to stand too quickly, tripped over her own foot, and that's when Raphael saw the baby. Tiny, wrapped in a faded pink blanket, her eyes half closed, her mouth slightly open in a soft sigh. She was asleep, oblivious to the world. But Raphael couldn't move. He couldn't breathe properly, because that face, those eyes, they were his brother's eyes, the same delicate curve of the lips, the same fragile expression he hadn't been able to protect when he had the chance. The pain hit him suddenly, sharp as a blade, and Raphael felt the floor shift beneath his feet. "Mr. Raphael, I'm so sorry," Clara stammered, her voice trembling, heavy with shame and fear. "I didn't have anyone to leave her with. It was only for today, I swear, But he wasn't hearing the words. He was seeing the way she held her daughter, as if the whole world could collapse, but this child would be safe. The fierce tenderness of that gesture struck him in a way he hadn't expected. "How many months?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Clara blinked, confused. "What?" "The baby. How many months old is she?" "6, she replied, still hesitant. 6 months. Raphael nodded, but said nothing. He just stood there, looking at the two of them as if trying to decipher a puzzle that made no sense. Clara wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to regain some dignity. "I'll leave. I won't bother you anymore. Please, don't fire me. I need this job, sir. Stay," he cut in, his voice soft but firm. She stopped, surprised. What? Stay, you and her. Raphael swallowed, unsure where those words were coming from. You don't have to go. Clara's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't from fear. It was something different, something he didn't know how to name. She held her daughter tighter, as if needing to be sure it was real. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Raphael simply nodded and left the library, his legs heavy, his heart racing. He retreated to his room and sat on the edge of the bed, his hands trembling. He didn't know what he had just done. He didn't know why he had done it. He only knew that for the first time in months, he felt something other than emptiness, and that scared him more than anything. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for heartwarming stories every day. In the following days, something shifted at the mansion. Clara returned to work, but now she brought the baby with her. Raphael said nothing. He simply observed from a distance how she organized her routine with impressive precision. The baby slept in a makeshift bassinet near the laundry room. Clara worked in silence, always attentive, always careful, and Raphael couldn't stop noticing. The way she hummed softly while mopping the floor, the way she smiled at her daughter even when she was exhausted, the way her eyes lit up when the baby giggled. There was something there he'd never seen up close, something that made him miss something he'd never had. One afternoon, he found her in the kitchen, cradling the baby while warming a bottle. Clara was singing softly, a simple, almost melancholic melody. Raphael stood frozen in the doorway, watching. She didn't notice. She was completely absorbed in the moment. That's when the baby opened her eyes and looked directly at him, and Raphael felt, for the second time, the world crumble. Because those eyes weren't just like his brother's. They held something he recognized, the promise that it was still possible to feel, that there was still something inside him that wasn't completely broken. Clara turned and saw him standing there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other, and the silence between them grew heavy with something neither dared to name. "She's beautiful," Raphael said finally. Clara smiled shyly. "Thank you." He wanted to say more. He wanted to ask about her life, about what had brought her here. But he couldn't. He just nodded and left, his heart beating at an unfamiliar tempo. And for the first time in a long time, Raphael found himself looking forward to tomorrow. Clara never imagined she'd end up here, in a 12-room mansion, cleaning marble floors while her daughter slept just a few feet away. Life hadn't been like this 2 years ago. Not when she still believed in promises, in new beginnings, in men who said, "I'll take care of you." But promises broke easily, and men who claimed to care were often the ones who hurt the most. She didn't like dwelling on the past. She preferred to keep her hands busy, her mind focused on the present. But sometimes, when the baby slept and the house became too quiet, the memories would resurface. The small apartment she shared with him, the arguments that started low and escalated to shouting, the night he raised his hand and she knew she had to leave, even with nowhere to go. Clara left in the middle of the night, 5 months pregnant, with a suitcase and a broken heart. She slept at a friend's place for 3 weeks, then at a shelter, until she landed the cleaning job. Her daughter was born in a public hospital, tiny and perfect, and Clara swore she'd do everything right this time, that nothing and no one would take this girl away from her. But doing everything right was hard when money barely covered rent, when the nearest daycare had a waiting list, when every day was a battle not to fall apart. And then came that moment in the library. The shock of being discovered, the shame of crying on the floor, holding her daughter as if the world were ending, and his voice, deep and gentle, saying, "Stay." Clara didn't understand Raphael. She didn't understand why he'd let her stay, why he hadn't fired her, why sometimes she'd catch him looking at the baby with a heartbreaking expression. He was a mystery. A man who had everything, yet seemed to carry the weight of having lost something money couldn't buy back. One morning, while organizing books in the library, Clara found an old photograph tucked inside a forgotten romance novel. It was Raphael, younger, smiling next to another man. They both looked happy. They looked whole. She turned the photo over and read the inscription scrawled in ink. "Forever, bro." Her heart ached. Clara carefully placed the photo back, but the image stayed with her. Now she understood a little more. She understood his silence, the way he avoided smiling, the way he looked at her daughter, as if seeing a ghost. They were alike, she and he, two people who had lost something important, who carried unseen wounds, who had learned to survive, but not to live. Raphael hadn't been sleeping well for months, but after that afternoon in the library, his nights became even longer. He'd lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her, the way Clara held her daughter, the way her eyes shone with a mixture of exhaustion and love. He shouldn't be thinking about it. He shouldn't be paying attention to the color of her hair, the way she tucked stray strands behind her ear when she was concentrating. He shouldn't notice how her voice softened when she spoke to the baby, as if the whole world could wait. But he did, and that scared him. Raphael had learned not to get close to people, because everything he touched, he broke. His marriage had been a disaster. His relationship with his brother, too distant until the very end. He didn't know how to care for anyone. He didn't know how to be kind. And Clara deserved someone who did. But even knowing that, he found himself making excuses to be at home, to pass through the kitchen when she was there, to hear the sound of her voice, even if they barely spoke to each other. One afternoon, while he was working in his study, Raphael heard a noise from the living room. He got up and found Clara trying to reach a vase on a high shelf, the baby in the stroller beside her. She was on her tiptoes, stretching her arm, but she couldn't reach it. "Let me get that," he said, appearing behind her. Clara startled, almost losing her balance. Raphael steadied her arm, and for a second, they were very close. Too close. He could smell the faint scent of the soap she used. He saw the blush creeping up her neck. "Thank you," Clara whispered, pulling away quickly. Raphael took the vase and placed it on the floor, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. He stood there, frozen, looking at her, trying to find the right words. But there were no right words. Just that heavy silence, laden with things neither of them knew how to say. "Are you all right?" he finally asked. Clara blinked, surprised. "I'm fine. Why?" "I don't know, you just seemed tired." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "I always look tired." Raphael wanted to say it wasn't that she looked beautiful, even tired, that there was something about her that made him want to be a better person. But he said nothing. He just nodded and returned to his study, his heart pounding. And Clara stood there holding the vase, feeling something strange stirring in her chest. Something that felt dangerous, something that felt like hope. The routine in the mansion settled into its own rhythm. Clara arrived early, always with the baby in her arms, and Raphael started working from home more. He told himself it was because of the backlog of reports, the meetings he could do via video conference. But the truth, the one he wouldn't admit out loud, was that he didn't want to be away anymore. Not from Clara, not from the little girl who reminded him of his brother, but who also made him feel something new, something that wasn't just pain. Clara's life, however, couldn't be contained within the walls of that house. There was the world outside. There was the past that insisted on knocking at the door. And there was Mariana, her older sister, who showed up one Friday afternoon unannounced. Clara was in the back porch hanging laundry when she heard the doorbell ring. She didn't even have time to move. Raphael answered it, and when Clara walked into the living room, she saw her sister standing there, arms crossed, looking at Raphael as if he were an intruder. "Mariana, what are you doing here?" Clara asked, her voice tense. "I came to see you. You haven't answered my messages in weeks." Mariana's gaze shifted to Raphael, then back to her sister. Who is he? My employer. Mariana raised an eyebrow. Your employer answers the door? Clara felt her face flush. Mariana, please. Raphael sensed the tension in the air and stepped back. I'll leave you two to talk, he said politely, and exited the room. But he didn't go far. He lingered in the hallway, listening unintentionally. Not because he wanted to pry, but because something in that conversation unsettled him. There was danger in that voice. There was something he recognized. Control disguised as concern. Are you living here now? Mariana asked, her arms still crossed. No, I just work here. And Sophia? You're bringing her to work. I didn't have a choice, Mari. You know that. I know you're getting involved in things you shouldn't. Mariana moved closer, her voice low and sharp. This man has money, Clara. Men with money don't look out for people out of kindness. He wants something, and when he gets tired of you, he'll discard you. It's not like that. No? Then explain to me why he lets you bring the baby. Why he keeps looking at you like that. Clara froze. Like what? Mariana smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The way a man looks when he wants. And you, Clara, you're too blind to see it. The words stung more than they should have. Because deep down, Clara was afraid they were true, afraid she was fooling herself, afraid Raphael was just being kind, and she was mistaking kindness for something more. I need you to leave, Clara said, her voice firm but her eyes glistening. Mariana sighed, weary. I'm just trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need you to trust me. Mariana didn't reply. She just picked up her bag, cast one last look down the hallway where Raphael was hidden, and left. Clara stood in the middle of the room, her hands trembling. She sank onto the sofa and buried her face in her hands, trying to breathe. That's when she felt a presence beside her. Raphael. He said nothing. He just sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance, but present. Clara wiped her face and looked at him. I'm sorry about that. You don't have to apologize. She doesn't understand. She thinks that I'll hurt you. Raphael finished, his voice low. Clara didn't deny it because it was true, and because somehow she was afraid of that too. I don't know what I feel, she confessed, her voice trembling. I don't know if I should feel anything. You're my employer. I'm just the housekeeper. Raphael turned to her, his eyes serious, intense. You've never been just anything, Clara. The air between them grew heavy. Clara felt her heart accelerate, blood pulsing in her temples. She wanted to believe. She wanted to believe so badly. But the fear was stronger. That night, Raphael couldn't sleep. He sat in the armchair in his bedroom, staring out the window, thinking about the conversation he'd overheard, about Clara's sister's words, the way she'd tried to protect her from him. And she was right to do so, because Raphael didn't know how to care. He didn't know how to be what Clara deserved. But for the first time in his life, he wanted to try. He wanted to be worthy of the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. But there were obstacles, differences, the whole world between them. And Raphael wasn't sure if he could navigate it without everything crashing down. The next few days were strange. Clara avoided being alone with Raphael. When he entered the kitchen, she'd find an excuse to leave. When they passed in the hallway, she'd look away. The silence between them, once pregnant with possibility, now weighed like a death sentence. Raphael noticed, and it gnawed at him. He tried to respect her space. He tried to go back to how things were before, when they barely saw each other, when he was just the distant boss and she the invisible employee. But he couldn't, because something had shifted, and there was no going back. It was on a rainy afternoon that it all came crashing down. Clara was in the laundry room folding towels when the baby started crying. She dropped everything and ran to the bassinet, scooping her daughter up, rocking her with that fierce tenderness Raphael knew so well. But the girl wouldn't calm down. She cried hard, inconsolably, and Clara started to panic. "Shh, my love. It's okay. Mummy's here," she whispered, but her voice trembled. Raphael appeared at the doorway. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. She won't stop crying." Clara looked at him, her eyes wide, scared. "I think she has a fever." Raphael moved closer, touching the baby's forehead. It was hot. Too hot. "I'll get the car. We'll take her to the ER." "No, I can't." "Clara." He took her arm, firm but gentle. "We're going now." She didn't have the strength to argue. She just nodded, and within minutes they were in the car. Raphael driving in silence, while Clara rocked her daughter in the back seat, singing softly, trying to soothe her. The hospital was packed. They waited almost an hour before being seen. Raphael stayed by Clara's side the whole time, not saying a word, just present. When the doctor finally called them, he squeezed her hand, a simple gesture, but it said everything. "It's a virus," the doctor explained after examining the baby. "Nothing serious, but she needs rest and plenty of fluids. She'll be fine in a few days." Clara dissolved into tears of relief. Raphael hugged her without thinking, and she clung to him as if he were the only solid thing in a world that insisted on crumbling. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice rough. "She's going to be fine." Clara nodded against his chest, feeling Raphael's heart pounding, racing. When they finally pulled apart, their eyes met. And for the first time, there was nothing between them, just the truth. "Thank you," she said, her voice weak. "Always," he replied. And in that moment, Raphael knew there was no turning back. He was in love. Completely, irrevocably in love. They returned to the mansion in silence. The baby slept in Clara's arms, finally calm. Raphael parked the car and sat for a moment, hands still on the wheel, unsure what to say. "Clara." "No," she interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "Please, don't say anything right now." He looked at her, confused. "Why?" "Because I don't know what to do with this." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "I don't know what to do with what I feel for you." Raphael felt a tightening in his chest. "And what do you feel?" Clara took a deep breath as if standing on the edge of a cliff. "Fear, hope, a desire to be close, even knowing I shouldn't." She held her daughter tighter. "I can't afford to make another mistake, Raphael. I have her. I need to protect her." "I understand. You understand." She smiled sadly. "You're wealthy, Raphael. You have everything, and I'm just a woman trying to get by. What do you want from me? What do you really want?" Raphael didn't hesitate. "You. Just you." The words hung in the air, heavy, true. Clara closed her eyes, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I wish I could believe." Then believe. She opened her eyes, looking at him with an intensity that disarmed him. "Give me time. Please." Raphael nodded, even though it ached, because if there was one thing he'd learned, it was that some things couldn't be rushed. Some things needed time to grow, to become real. He got out of the car, opened the door for her, and they entered the house in silence. But something had shifted. An unspoken promise. A possibility that hung in the air like the rain still falling outside. And for the first time, Raphael allowed himself to hope. 3 weeks had passed since that night in the hospital. 3 weeks where Clara and Raphael had danced around each other, as if the space between them was made of glass. He tried not to get too close. She tried not to feel too much, but it was useless. The feeling grew, and the more it grew, the more it frightened her. It was on a Monday morning that everything unraveled. Clara was in the kitchen making Raphael breakfast like she did every day when she heard voices in the living room. 2 voices, One was Raphael's, the other a woman's, soft, polite. Clara shouldn't have listened. She should have continued her work and pretended it didn't matter. But she couldn't. "You need to think this through, Raphael," the woman was saying, her tone gentle but firm. "This situation isn't sustainable. It's none of your business, Camilla." "Of course it is. I care about you, and I know you're confusing loneliness with feelings." Clara felt her heart sink. Camilla, the ex-wife. "I'm not confused," Raphael replied, his voice tense. "No." "Then explain to me what you're doing, letting the housekeeper live here with her daughter, acting like you're responsible for them." "I'm not acting like anything, You've gotten attached, and that's dangerous, Raphael, for you and for her." Clara couldn't listen anymore. She left the kitchen through the back door, her heart pounding in her chest, her eyes burning. She grabbed her daughter from the stroller and walked to the garden, trying to breathe, trying not to break down. But Camilla's words echoed in her head, confusing loneliness with feelings. What if it was true? What if Raphael was just filling a void? What if Clara was just convenient? She sat on the wooden bench, rocking the baby in her arms, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. She didn't notice when Raphael appeared. "Clara!" She quickly wiped her face, but it was too late. "Sorry. I just needed some air." "You heard the conversation," he said. It wasn't a question. Clara didn't answer. She just looked away, anywhere but at him. "She's wrong," Raphael continued, his voice low, desperate. "I'm not confused. I know what I feel." "You know?" Clara finally looked at him, her eyes red. "Because I don't know, Raphael. I don't know if this is real or if I'm just so tired of fighting alone that I clung to the first person who was kind to me. It's not that." "How do you know?" Raphael took a step forward, but Clara stood up, backing away. "No, please don't come any closer." He stopped, the pain visible on his face. "Clara, I need you to understand. I've never felt this before, never. And I know it's complicated, I know we're from different worlds, but that doesn't change what I feel. And will what you feel be enough when the whole world tells you I'm not good enough for you? When your family, your friends, everyone looks at me and sees only the housekeeper who took advantage of the boss? I don't care what they think, but I do." She held her daughter tightly, her voice breaking. "I care because I've been through this. I've been judged, belittled, treated like I was worth nothing. And I won't go through this again. I won't put my daughter in this situation." "Clara, I think it's best if I leave." The silence that fell between them was devastating. Raphael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "No, please, don't do this. I have to protect her, to protect myself." She walked past him, her shoulders trembling, and Raphael stood there, frozen, watching the woman he loved walk away, and for the first time in his life, he understood true despair. Clara drove away from the mansion the next day. Raphael didn't try to stop her. He just watched from his office window as she loaded the few things she owned into her old car, the baby buckled in the back seat. She didn't look back. She didn't wave. She just left, and the mansion fell silent again. Too silent. Raphael spent the following days in a daze. He didn't work. He didn't eat properly. He just wandered through the empty house, feeling the weight of her absence in every room. He tried to convince himself it was for the best, that Clara was right, that he didn't know how to care, that maybe it was better to let her go. But his heart wouldn't accept it. His heart insisted on remembering. Her smile, her soft voice singing to their daughter, the way she looked at him, as if she saw something in him no one else did. Then, one afternoon, while tidying the library, Raphael found something that made him stop. A blanket, small, pink, faded. The same one that had wrapped the baby the first time he saw her. She had forgotten it. Raphael held the blanket between his fingers, the child's faint scent still clinging to the fabric, and in that moment, something shifted within him. A decision, a certainty. He couldn't let her go, not without a fight. Clara's apartment was small, cramped, but clean. She'd landed a new job, a cleaning company that paid less and demanded more. Bills were tight. The baby woke up in the middle of the night, crying. Clara slept little, ate even less, but at least she was away. Away from temptation, away from the possibility of getting hurt. Or so she tried to convince herself, because every night, when she finally managed to close her eyes, she dreamed of him, of Raphael's deep voice, of the way he looked at her, of the sense of security she felt in his arms at the hospital, and she'd wake up with a broken heart. It was a Thursday night while rocking her daughter to sleep that Clara heard the doorbell ring. She frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. She placed the baby in the crib and went to the door, peeking through the peephole. It was him, Raphael. Her heart pounded. For a moment, she considered not opening, pretending she wasn't home, but she knew it was useless. He knew she was there. She could feel it. She opened the door, but said nothing. Just stood there looking at him, trying to maintain her composure. Raphael looked tired. His suit was wrinkled, his hair messy, his eyes deep set, but there was something in him she hadn't seen before. Determination. "Hi," he said, his voice rough. "Hi." Silence. "You forgot this," Raphael said, holding out his hand, showing the pink blanket. Clara felt her eyes sting. She took the blanket, clutching it to her chest. "Thank you. Clara, can we talk?" She wanted to say no. She wanted to close the door and protect her heart, but she couldn't. "Come in." Raphael stepped inside, looking around. The apartment was the opposite of the mansion. Small, simple, but full of life. Pictures of the baby on the refrigerator. Toys scattered on the floor. The scent of baby powder and coffee in the air. "Is she okay?" he asked, looking towards the crib. "She's fine. Sleeping." Another silence. "Clara, I know you're scared, and I understand, I swear I understand, but I can't stay away from you. I tried, but I can't." "Raphael, no, let me finish." He took a step forward, his voice firm but filled with emotion. "I've spent my whole life afraid to feel, afraid to get close to people, because everything I touched, I broke. And when you came along, I was scared too, but for the first time, the fear wasn't stronger. For the first time, I wanted to take a risk. What if it goes wrong? What if it goes right?" Clara closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know if I can." Raphael moved closer, cupping her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Then let me show you. Let me prove to you that this is real. That it's not loneliness, not confusion. It's love, Clara. I love you." The words hung in the air, heavy, true. Clara sobbed, her hands trembling. "I love you too," she whispered. "I love you too. And that's why I'm so scared." Raphael pulled her close, holding her tightly, as if wanting to protect her from everything, even her own fear. "I won't hurt you," he promised. "I won't." And for the first time, Clara allowed herself to believe. That night they talked for hours about the past, about their fears, about the dreams they'd each kept hidden deep inside. Raphael spoke about his brother, about the guilt he carried for not being there when he needed him. Clara spoke about her ex, about the nights she thought she wouldn't make it. And slowly, the weight began to lift. When dawn broke, Raphael was still there. Sitting on the couch, Clara curled up beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. The baby woke up, and Raphael picked her up, cradling her gently, as if holding something precious. Clara watched, her heart overflowing, and she knew that despite everything, it was worth the risk. The following days were different. Clara returned to the mansion. But this time, not as staff. Raphael insisted she didn't need to work anymore, that he would take care of everything. Clara resisted at first, too proud to accept. But he was patient. He explained it wasn't charity. It was love. It was wanting to be close. It was wanting to build something together. And Clara, for the first time, let someone take care of her. But the world outside wasn't so kind. Raphael's family didn't accept it. His mother showed up one afternoon, all elegance and coldness, and made her opinion clear. She's not from our world, Raphael. I know, and I don't care. You will care when she embarrasses you, when people start talking. Let them talk. His mother looked at Clara, who was in the kitchen pretending not to listen, but hearing every word. Do you think she loves you? Or is she just after your money? That was too far. Raphael stood up, his voice low, dangerous. Get out of my house. Now. His mother blinked, surprised. Raphael, I said get out. She left, indignant. But Raphael didn't regret it, because for the first time in his life, he had chosen someone. He had chosen love. But Clara carried the weight of those words. She knew people would talk, they would judge, they'd say she wasn't good enough, and a part of her still believed it. It was one night while putting the baby down to sleep that Raphael found her crying silently in the nursery. What's wrong? What if your mom's right? What if I'm really not cut out for you? Raphael sat beside her, taking her hand in his. Do you think I care what my mom thinks? You should. Why? Because she's your family. And you're my heart. He turned her face towards him, his eyes serious, intense. I chose you, Clara, and I'll keep choosing you every single day. No matter what anyone says, no matter how many times they try to pull us apart. Clara sobbed, clinging to him. I just don't want you to have regrets. Never. He kissed her slowly, as if sealing a promise. And for the first time, Clara felt she could relax. That she could trust, that she could love without fear of getting lost along the way. The following weeks were the happiest Clara had ever known. Raphael introduced her to his friends, his colleagues, his world. And while some looked with suspicion, others saw what was obvious. Two wounded hearts that had found healing in each other. The baby was growing, laughing more, and Raphael had become the father figure she'd never had. He'd rock her when she cried, sing her to sleep, and Clara would watch, her heart overflowing, knowing she'd made the right choice. One night, as they were having dinner together on the porch, Raphael took her hand across the table. Marry me. Clara almost choked. What? Marry me? He smiled, nervous, vulnerable. I know it's soon. I know there's still a lot to figure out. But I know I want you by my side, forever. Clara felt tears stream down her face. Are you sure? Absolutely. She laughed, crying, and nodded. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Raphael pulled her into a kiss, and the world around them faded away. There was only them, only this moment, only this love that had been born improbably, but had become the most real thing they had ever felt. 6 months later, Clara wore a simple white dress and held a bouquet of wildflowers. Raphael stood beside her in a suit, his smile the most genuine anyone had ever seen on him. The ceremony was small, intimate, with just a few close friends, but it was perfect. And when the justice of the peace said, "You may kiss the bride," Raphael pulled her close and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to love." Clara smiled, her eyes shining. "Thank you for not giving up on me." The baby, now a year old, was in the godmother's arms, clapping her hands and giggling. And in that moment, Clara knew it had all been worth it, every tear, every fear, every sleepless night. Because love, when it's true, always finds a way. They moved into a smaller, cozier house. Raphael cut back on his work hours. Clara went back to school, chasing her dream of getting her degree in early childhood education. The baby grew up surrounded by love, security, and laughter, and on nights when the world grew quiet, Raphael and Clara would sit on the porch, holding hands, looking at the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" she'd sometimes ask. "Never," he'd always reply. And it was true, because their love hadn't been easy. It hadn't been perfect, but it was real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. And that's how two wounded hearts discovered that love, when it's true, always finds a way. So, what did you think of this story? What was the moment that touched your heart the most? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll never miss our love stories.